Cause your vibe it be different than shine in your eyes what I'm missing. Your body Ferrari, but your mind is my interest. You finding your find in the sky, we gon' ride the ecliptic like a Mercury transit. Peace, y'all. Today with Star Card Astrology, and I'm here to give you your daily astrology guidance for July 28th, 2022. Happy new moon in Leo. Let's get into it. So, we have the sun and moon conjunct in Leo. All right. That is what a full moon is. It's when the sun and moon conjunct each other. A new moon is when the sun and moon oppose each other. So, just off that alone, emotions, how we feel is all going to be really focused on ourselves, focused on our self-love, and focused on love in general, especially with Mercury here, right? But Mercury is making this hard square to Mars in Taurus. And Mars in Taurus, Mars right now is debilitated. Mars -10. Okay? So that right there, maybe I should keep it at the lower quality because it doesn't seem to do the weird stuff. But this is kind of where we can see a lot of conflicts happen between people. Not necessarily miscommunication, but communicating how we truly feel about a situation, about what we actually value and what we don't. All those truths are definitely going to come out. So if we're in a situation that is not of our value, that's not valuing us correctly, then this is where we can see major conflict happen, because we have Jupiter that has gone retrograde. And we haven't seen Jupiter go retrograde for a good long while now. Okay? So, I believe it was 2010. Or at least the last time it went retrograde in Aries. So, a lot of doors closing. A lot of exposure happening. But this is a deflationary energy. Because Jupiter is the big red giant. It expands every part of the chart that it transits through. So as it goes retrograde, it's deflating those parts. Okay, it's repressing, not necessarily repressing, but it's like letting the air out, right? Or popping a blister or something like that, right? So all the insides come out, right? So what does that mean? That means that, okay, Jupiter is going to retrograde back into the last degrees of Pisces, which is also going to be a very interesting thing to see. It's going to meet back up with Neptune, which is also retrograde. So we have most of the chart retrograde, besides Venus, besides Mercury, and besides Mars. But some powerful energies are retrograde right now. Okay. But Jupiter's now backtracking to where the last time it was direct, was when it was in Aquarius. We saw the great conjunction with Saturn and Jupiter that created this massive science experiment. And the reason why we say it's a science experiment is because Aquarius rules science, it rules laboratories, it rules scientists, it rules research. Okay? And when Jupiter and Saturn conjunct, it's a very rare thing. It happens every 100 or so years. Now, Jupiter is essentially Zeus, and Saturn is essentially Kronos. And if we know anything about Greek Roman mythology, then we understand that Kronos eats his children. So that means that Jupiter's not going to overpower Saturn, even though it's a very powerful planet, and they're both the two largest energies out there. Okay? So that means that Saturn's way is what was imprinted at that time. So basically, Saturn wanted to go on this harsh lesson, very harsh lesson, one of the harshest lessons of all time. Because at that same time, we had Mercury in Pisces, which we've talked about this probably many times for people who've been following along, or anybody who really knows about astrology, or anybody who follows the Leo King. We call it a magical spell, because Pisces is where the magic is. Pisces is where source is. It's where God is. It's where the magic can happen. And Mercury rules communication and thoughts. So at the same time that Saturn wants this experiment to happen, it's Mercury is there allowing this spell to happen, where people will get caught up in beliefs, right? Because that's another thing is, well, we're talking about unconscious and conscious energy. Pisces, the two fish. One is in the spiritual realm and one is in the fully unconscious realm. So at that time, people had to make a choice on what they believed in. Did they believe in the spiritual way or the unconscious way? The unconscious way is relying on the system. The spiritual way is relying on God, relying on your intuition. So what's going to happen here with this Jupiter retrograde as it gets closer and closer to Pisces, where it's exalted, if I'm not mistaken, if I know my astrology right. You can correct me in the comments if I ever get something wrong. I'd love it. But in retro, we're going to see the unraveling of that conjunction that we saw in Aquarius, because it's not going to make it all the way back to Aquarius. But all that energy is moving with Jupiter. It all moves together. That's why it's a wheel. That's why it's going through these different transits. That's why it goes through the different houses. Because it's all information, especially as Mercury makes its way. Mercury is the messenger, so it's going around collecting data from all the other planets and then bringing them back to the king and queen, the sun and the moon. So what data has Mercury been collecting since then, since its magical spell that it put on the world? Right? What has it learned now? What is all the data that's coming out? And now, it's so funny how all the data comes out in Mercury and Leo, where it's like, well, you better love yourself. You better communicate that love for yourself. Stand up for the love that you have for yourself, which also gets reflected into humanity and the people you care about. Okay, so this is a very vital day that is we're going to remember for a while, because it's the beginning of the end of a lot of narratives. I think a lot of people have gotten to this point now where they can kind of see through the lies that came and the game that was played for the last couple years. It's almost undeniable now. Because that's the thing about Leo. It's like that undeniable love. It's like that undeniable passion that you can question it if you just want to be whatever. I don't even know. You could question it if you want, but that Leo energy is always fixated on something that it truly wants to be fixated on. It's undeniable. So, Mercury in Leo, data, information coming out that is the truth. It's the truth. The truth is coming out. And it's even more enhanced now that Jupiter is in Aries. It's almost like, oh, all that ego shit that kept happening. Oh, do this, do that. This will do this. This will do that. Everybody's fucking, they wanted to go and tell people shit that was contrary to the actual facts based off of agendas, personal agendas, financial agendas, governmental agendas. So all that is unraveling. This is the beginning of a massive unravel. Don't even know how it's going to look. Because why? Because of this Uranus North Node, Mars conjunction that is getting more and more exact at each day. So now that we have Jupiter moving backwards, from our perspective, Mars is at 16 degrees. It's going to hit 18 and then 19, and they're all going to be super conjunct here. Okay? They're all going to be super conjunct. And there's no way to actually tell you how that looks. All we know is that it's radical energy. It's radical. Yesterday, I think I said it was like a atom bomb. Mars is war. Uranus is... It has a lot to do with humanity, but it has this unpredictable energy there. So, this is where we all kind of have to stand up in our truth, communicate our truth, communicate our value of ourself, our love of ourself, our love of our collective. And again, not move through fear. Not move through fear. South Node in Scorpio. That's where we don't want to be. So if we made choices that put us in positions that we're not happy with, or if we believed in something that is now proven to not be true or not be effective or have no efficacy, then we still can't move through a place of fear. It's not going to do us any good. And no matter how cut short life might be for some of us, you still want to live those days as fruitful as possible. Regardless, because we all don't know when our last day is, right? We don't know. There's no way to tell. You can't even run an astrology chart and figure out when somebody's going to die. That there's no way to do that. You can go back after somebody died and be like, oh, well, maybe this was why. And maybe this is what they could have did to stay alive. But you can't be like, oh, yeah, this is the day they're going to die. There's no way. It's just nothing can predict that. So moving through fear, living in fear, is the astrology is telling us not to do that. So no matter what happens in these next few weeks here, these next couple months, really, we have to make sure that we're not moving through fear. And honestly, I'm getting to this point where I'm going to start doing a weekly show where we can just have discussions about what's going on, so that we can have a collective environment where people on either side of the fence of all of this crazy shit can come together, and we can figure out how to help everyone. Because so many souls were misguided and they didn't have the right information. But a lot of that is certain people's awakening process. So, in my opinion, I think that there needs to be a place where we can help the people who are waking up now. Because a lot of this information is for people who have been awake. A lot of this is for people who have been looking at astrology, who believe in astrology. Usually people who don't believe this stuff, they're not jumping on here. They're not looking at this. But what about the ones who are just like, oh wow, clearly the system is trying to fuck me, and maybe there's something else that I'm not seeing? So I just got a cool message. But yeah, so that's all I can give you for the astrology. So let's see what we have for the cards. Let's see what we can have for the cards.
That's really what it is. I need to really stand up and make sure that I need basically make sure that coming from a place of management and events, that anybody's going through anymore, that people are doing to yes.
Individually, you have to understand that most people are not ready. They're not prepared for what's coming. They're not prepared for what they're already going through. That's why there's so many unhappy people. Because they weren't even prepared for what they're going through now. It takes a special type of soul that came into this life fully prepared for the ups and downs to remain consistently happy and positive through it all. And even then, you're still going to have your ups and downs. You're still going to have days where you're not feeling 100%. But are you going to hate life? That's the question. How many people hate life? How many people feel like they get dealt the bad hand when you have to always be like, okay, well, tomorrow's a new day. And basically, I get dealt a new hand every day. So what am I going to do with that? Am I going to remain in the same place? Am I going to just chill? Am I going to just feel bad for myself and play the victim? No, victimization right now will lead to your demise. Jupiter's not with none of that. Jupiter doesn't play the victim. It's Zeus. Does Zeus play the victim? Nah, G. Nah, that's not how that works. So no matter what, even Jupiter in retrograde, we can't play the victim. We have to rise up to the occasion. So we have the 10 of Wands. Okay? The 10 of Wands. Reversed. So this is where we really need to make sure that we're not feeling like we are already in a place of like financial stability, or that we've already achieved everything that we need to achieve, this is where we need to look at where can we go harder? Where can we improve? What are the things that we need to learn in order to exceed our expectations? Because right now we might be in a place where we think everything's okay. And
the proof to evidence, and there's not necessarily much to prepare, much that you can expect. You have to just prepare for it and expect it. So,
I hope that helps. And until next time, one love.
Cause your vibe may be different, can shine in your eyes what I'm missing. Your body Ferrari, but your mind is my interest. You finding the sky, we gon' ride the eclipse like a Mercury transit.